Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, HeartMath practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi folks, a very warm welcome to episode 72 of the podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about resistance, which can often feel like an internal battle that happens before you have a breakthrough. This is the halfway point of 2024. I'm recording this and releasing this on the 21st of June, which is literally the longest day if you are in the Northern Hemisphere and the shortest day if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. We are at the halfway point of 2024. And this is a really good time. It's like the halftime show, if you like, to start to reflect on where you're at in terms of the progress that you had set out to make when the year started. And if you are doing really well and you're motoring along and you've got to the halftime show of 2024 and you're thinking, yep, I'm on track to hit my goals by the end of December, you can probably stop listening to this now. If not, this episode is for you. I think sometimes having a little bit of pressure applied to the goals that we set for ourselves can be really useful. So if you are listening to this, and you are also having the shocking realization the half of a year has disappeared and I'm not quite sure where it went to. And you've not made any more progress really from where you started in January. You're not really much further along. The things that you'd wanted to change haven't changed. The career shift you wanted to make hasn't happened. The goals that you set yourself and the resolutions you put into place have all fallen by the wayside. Now is the time to really pick up the pieces of those goals and those desires and those resolutions and put them out on the table, have a look at them and see which of them are actually really important to you and to start taking action on those now. You will still be able to see big shifts at the end of the year if you take action now, but if you allow the inaction to keep rolling over, it will compound. And I think the one thing that always terrifies me is closing 1 year off and looking back and thinking I had 12 months to do a whole bunch of things. I didn't take action. I procrastinated and I'm no further along and I'm starting another year in the same spot. That to me is kind of one of my worst nightmares really in life. And if this is resonating for you, it doesn't have to be like that, but you have got to really get into action, have a plan, and start to step up for yourself. Now, this brings me to resistance, which is the topic of today's podcast, because resistance is something that can come up when you set a goal. It can come up when you decide to make a change and you'll find lots of excuses to not do it. And resistance is particularly dangerous the closer you get to the achievement of a goal. So if you are making progress and you're at the halfway point of the year and you're thinking, I was making really good progress, but it seems to have ground to a halt and I'm not really quite sure why, but I was quite close to hitting the target I'd set for myself or reaching the goal, and for whatever reason, I've fallen off track. That is resistance. Stephen Pressfield has a wonderful book called The War on Art, which is something I picked up many years ago because I'm also a photographer. And actually that book really is about resistance to the creative process. It's resistance to writing and, putting your own personal work out into the world. And one of the quotes that he has in the book that I'm going to share with you is that resistance arises from within. It is self-generated and self-perpetuated. Resistance is the enemy within. And it really is. And it's really frustrating. But if you don't quite realize you're doing it, it's a difficult thing to stop doing. So I just wanted to share with you a few of the ways that resistance can start to show up when you decide to take action and you're motoring along and then it literally falls off track. And this is how people end up starting big projects and not finishing them. This is when people make promises to themselves if they're going to do something, they start it and it just goes completely off the wagon. And here are some of the ways it can happen. Procrastination. So this might be mindlessly scrolling on your phone, TV show, Netflix binges, coming up with mindless admin tasks that you need to do. The amount of people I coach who will tell me they don't have time to do things. And if we do a time inventory, they're just busy being busy. One of the questions you can ask yourself with the tasks you're doing is this moving me further towards my goal, or is this just keeping me stuck right where I am, effectively kind of, metaphorical paper shuffling? And if you notice you are doing a metaphorical paper shuffle, you've got resistance, folks, and you need to do something about it. Stopping to make endless cups of tea. This is one of my patterns that I've caught myself doing is if I'm, in the middle of some sort of work task and I've almost finished it, I'll think, I'm just going to go and make a quick cup of tea. And I've stopped myself now. And when I notice that urge coming up, I'll say, yep, you can make that cup of tea when you have finished this task. So I actually force myself to finish what I'm doing if that urge starts to come up because I'm able to catch it. Comfort eating and snacking to avoid doing things that you need to do. I think for people who are on wellness journeys, on weight loss journeys, on tackling eating habits that are less than healthy, resistance is a huge way that'll come up, where you're doing really well and then you eat a bag of sweets or a tub of ice cream and then, hate on yourself afterwards. Self-medicating with alcohol and prescription medication. Resistance can often feel like anxiety, and then it's very easy to reach for anxiety meds to calm it down and quieten it. Feeling really unsettled for no apparent reason. Depression and apathy that really leads you into inaction. Drama in your personal life. Now, this can come up as something that you subconsciously cause, or this can be something that just starts to happen around you as you're changing things. Often when we are on a personal development journey or some sort of inner journey that's causing outer changes to happen that affect the other people in our lives, they will subconsciously start to throw resistance in. Again, it's a very interesting pattern to pick up on if you're able to see how a dynamic shifts when you start to go in one direction and the people around you aren't so keen on that and they do things to pull you back to where you were. Unexpected problems that arise, criticism of yourself, criticism of others, imposter syndrome, a big fear of failure that kind of just stops you in your tracks, starting fights with your partner, feeling really, really overwhelmed. And even physical symptoms like fatigue or headaches or stomach aches, these things can all come up, and they are all forms of resistance. And they're really, really frustrating. And I think it takes getting to the point of being sick of your own bullshit that you can actually start to notice these patterns occurring and then start to really take control of and notice them when they come up and start to do something different. So effectively, resistance is a form of unconscious self-sabotage. The problem with setting big goals and the problem with instigating change in your life or in your career or in your business is that we're often taking ourselves out of a comfort zone. Even if your life isn't where you want it to be and you're kind of bumbling along and just getting by, or you've got a relationship that it's fine, it's not magic, but it's fine. Sometimes it can feel easier to stay in that because it's familiar. So the just getting by when it comes to a work situation or a business, it's familiar. We know how to just get by. We're familiar with that pattern. The just fine relationship, you're familiar with that pattern. You know how to cope with it. You know what it involves. You know all the players that are in it, and you know what's going to happen. There's nothing that's really going to blindside you, because even though it's crap, it's predictable and it's certain. And when we start to decide, actually, that relationship that's just fine is not enough for me anymore, that's when resistance will arrive and go, oh, are you sure? Because what if you leave this relationship and you're on your own forevermore? And it brings in a load of anxiety, and it brings in a load of looping thought patterns about, your worthiness, and what will dating be like, and the dialogues you hear from lots of people about, the dating world is terrible. All of those things will come into play, and that's resistance's way of going, do you know what, just stay where it's fine, because we can cope with that. The same with if you're going to do a career shift, or you're doing something different with a business. It'll show up, because effectively what you do when you start the ball rolling for a change to occur is you take yourself out completely into the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen fundamentally, and that is terrifying. So resistance is our unconscious way of keeping ourselves safe. So if you are able to view your resistance with a bit of compassion, even though it can feel like it's something you want to drop kick over the nearest wall, if you can have compassion for it and acknowledge that it's there, and it's there to keep you safe, you can start to unpack what the beliefs are underneath the resistance of why it might be that you don't feel safe. What are you worried about being able to cope with? I've set myself a big financial goal for this year, and it's been interesting observing the thoughts that are coming up around that. It's brought up a lot of fear for me. What if I can't do it? But it's also brought up things like, what if I do it? What am I going to do about that kind of money? What am I going to do when I get to the stage of having to manage fat? And what are we going to do about, making sure everything's accounted for properly, and I don't make any mistakes, and I don't end up with a surprise tax bill somewhere? Those are all the sorts of things that come up. And actually, a lot of those problems are going to be quite, up-leveled problems to deal with. And they're problems that are easily solvable because you get the right advice. I've got a great accountant. The solutions are there, but that's what resistance does. It goes, yeah, but do you want all that money? Because with it might bring a load of problems. So in the time that you're wasting thinking about all of these thoughts that resistance brings up, you're not taking action, and it's stopping you from doing things. And the even better thing about resistance is, as you're making progress, the closer you get to your goal, the louder the voice of resistance will become. And I think that is one way you can know you are on track for having a breakthrough and you are on track for a life up level, is when the resistance gets almost unbearable. And at that point, you have a choice. You have a choice to throw in the towel and say, actually, I can't do this. Or you have a choice to say, all right, I hear this voice of resistance getting louder and louder. Must mean there's a bit of a breakthrough coming. I am going to acknowledge that it's happening, and I'm going to keep taking action. I'm going to keep going anyway. So I wanted to share a few things you can do to help you overcome resistance when it does show up for you. And the first thing here really is to have the self-awareness to recognize that it is resistance. Because when we know what it is, it's a bit easier to understand what you're dealing with. For me, it comes up as feelings of anxiety that almost come out of nowhere. And it's horrible, because I'll be sitting, might be lying in bed reading a book, and all of a sudden I'm feeling incredibly anxious for no reason. And I think, I just had a thought that, maybe the business stuff is really going in a great direction, and it feels quite good. And immediately following on from that thought will be a feeling of anxiety. So I know that's resistance coming up, and I'm able to say, all right, that's fine. It's just resistance. I'm just going to acknowledge it, and I'm going to not get suckered into its inner dialogue that it wants to try and have with me. But here are a few things you can do to help tackle it when it does come up. It's an invariable thing that will arrive when you want to change something or you set a goal. And the thing is to make sure you have a very clear why behind the goal you have set for yourself. Write it down, clearly define it, give it a time limit, make it doable within the context of your life, and make it exciting. Feel into what it's going to be like when you've achieved that goal. You can spend time visualizing it each day. You can create a vision board around it. You can have post-its about it, but make sure it's something you're excited about, because if you're excited about it, you can, and your excitement level is just a little bit more than your resistance level, you'll be able to motivate yourself to keep going. List out all the steps you're going to need to take to get to your goal. Resistance hates clarity. So if you can map out the route and literally start walking, if you know roughly where you're going, roughly the steps you need to take, and what kind of direction you're going in, it's easier to stay on track when resistance arrives and goes, hey, there's a new show on Netflix, let's go watch it. It's easier to say, no, thank you, I'm doing something else. Be disciplined about taking daily action towards your goals, even if it's teeny, teeny, tiny action steps. Just do something each day to keep yourself going forwards. When you are instigating change of any sort, there will be a period of time from when you decided to do it, when you started taking action, and when the results show up, there's going to be a period of time when nothing happens, where it looks like what you're doing isn't working, where it looks like you're getting no results. And again, the resistance thoughts are going to come in. See, you can't do it. See, it's not working. Let's quit. Let's do something else. Let's try something else. And that is the point at which it's really important to kind of white knuckle through it and keep going anyway. Don't ignore the feelings that resistance brings up with it. Most of the feelings that will arrive with resistance are going to be negative ones. They're going to be anxiety. They're going to be worry. They're going to be frustration. And difficult feelings are hard to shove down, and they're also hard to ignore because they tend to instigate really unpleasant and unhelpful looping thought patterns. So if you can acknowledge the frustration, for example, and you can just go, oh, I notice I'm feeling really frustrated right now. Sometimes that's just enough to be able to make it dissipate so you can carry on doing what you're doing. It tends to get harder to work through difficult feelings when we try and shove them in a box and shut the lid, because they will burst out at some point. And there is really an element of feeling the fear and taking action anyway. If you really want something, and it's a big change or a big goal that you're after, it isn't going to be easy to get there. It isn't an easy path. And you have to really want it, and you have to stay focused on that end goal that you're after and really keep that big picture in mind. And like I said, I think if you can view resistance as a sign that you are almost where you want to be, it's almost a reassurance that you're doing the right thing. The great phrase that comes to mind is the breakdown comes before the breakthrough. And that has been my experience so often in life. It is so annoying, but it's one of those things where you get to the point where I know I have in my life with business things, with business goals, with personal life stuff, that it'll get to a point where it feels like nothing's working and I almost want to throw the towel in, but because I'm really stubborn, I keep going. And you find that the breakthrough is just on the other side of that point of breakdown where you just don't think you can continue to do it anymore. And it's important to keep pushing through. But I just want to remind you that you don't have to travel this journey on your own. It is quite hard navigating resistance when it comes up because it's so insidious. And it's something that you can have help with. This is why I exist as a life coach, to help people navigate through change and to be with people whilst they white knuckle through the difficult patch of making something new happen, of birthing a new project to life. If it was easy, everybody would be successful. And that's the simple fact of the matter is achieving big things, making big changes, and creating a life or a business or a career that is really exciting for you, or all of the above, is not easy. And you don't have to travel that path alone. So if you've listened to this and you are curious about how coaching would be able to help you achieve your goals and help you navigate through any resistance that might come up for you, please feel free to just pop me a message. You can pop me an email, emma@emmaobrien.coach.com, or you can book a strategy call with me directly from the link in the show notes. This is an opportunity to chat through where you're at, what's happening, and how coaching might be able to help you. I'm here to help folks, so I would really love to hear from you. And one of the things I'm most passionate about is really helping people bring bigger, bolder, more exciting, more fulfilling lives to life. So I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I will see you again same time next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.